Titus, the Roman general, came back. He besieged it and then squashed it, crushed it, burned it, and took that temple apart stone by stone so there wasn't.
The Holocaust is one of the most documented events in human history. January the 28th of every year is Holocaust Observance Day, so declared by the United Nations, because that's when Auschwitz-Buchenwald was liberated by the Russians. April the 10th, 1945, Buchenwald was liberated by the American troops. April the 15th, 1945, Bergen-Belsen was liberated by the British. April the 17th, 1945, Ravensbrück, Sachsenhausen, and Dachau were liberated by troops of the various nations. Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, General Dwight David Eisenhower, who later on became President Eisenhower, toured the Dachau concentration camp. He found victims of the death camps. He ordered all possible photographs to be taken and for the German people from surrounding villages to be ushered through the camps and even made to bury the dead. Why? Because they all said, we did not know. It wasn't us. It was Hitler and Himmler and Goebbels and Göring who was responsible. Well, let me tell you something. I visited Dachau in 1961. The camp was liberated in 1945, 16 years after the camp was liberated. When you got within a 2-kilometer radius of the camp, you could still smell the camp. So much for the myth that they didn't know. When asked why, he said words to this effect: get it all on record now. Get the films, get the witnesses. Because somewhere down the track of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened. 65 years after the Holocaust, there's still evidence coming out. Last year, in August of 2009, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Berlin, and he was given original blueprints of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. And in the corner of that blueprint were the initials HH, Heinrich Himmler. He approved the blueprints of the camp. Last year, while working on a school in Auschwitz, in the wall they found a bottle with 5 signatures on them. They were the signature of French and Polish Christians who were forced to work in this school in Auschwitz. One of them was a man by the name of Alfred Vassid. He is 84 years old, still lives in Lyon, France. He has the number A12063 tattooed into his arm. And he verified that those signatures were authentic. They were afraid that they were going to be murdered, so they wanted the world to know that they had existed. So they signed that slip of paper, stuck it in a bottle, and buried it in the wall at the school. I don't live too far from here. I live in East Cobb County. In 1974, more than that, 1984, I'm sorry. In my subdivision, and several subdivisions around this, was left the following paraphernalia. Deport race mixers if you want oil, nuke Israel, white power, and in order to fight crime, deport, and I don't use that word, but you can see it's become known as the N-word since the O.J. Simpson trial. On the back it says, who is this man? He looks like an American, he dresses like an American, he speaks the same language as Americans. Goes into a whole bunch of diatribe, and it says, who is this man? He's a Jew. Don't trust him. 1984, wow. East Cobb County, Georgia. The Southern Poverty Law Center did a survey, and they found out that there are 762 active hate groups in the United States. if you were to come down to the Bremen and you heard me speak, you would be given a copy of my biography. On the back of it there's a place where we ask the students and the people who come through there to sign it. Elie Wiesel, who I've had the honor of meeting several times, says to hear a witness is to be a witness. I'm getting older. I'm not old by any means up here. I'm still 21 and my body says, yeah, right you are, But we ask these young people that as they get older, they have families of their own, and then somewhere along the line somebody's going to say there was no such thing as the Holocaust. They will say, yes, there was. I heard a survivor speak, and there was. The sad part is, ladies and gentlemen, is that even today there is genocides going across the nation. Rwanda, Bosnia, and now in the Darfur section of the Sudan. Over 400,000 are already dead, and 2.5 million people are refugees. And the world still stands by, deaf, dumb, and blind. Thank you.
I would like to know about the reunion between your mother and your father. Could you share?
There was no reunion between my mother and my father. My father never came to this country. He stayed in France.
But they met, I mean, from the Holocaust, when you were in the apartment and he went to the death camp. How?
My father walked in the door. We didn't know if he had been alive or not. When he walked in the door, I hid behind my mother. I didn't recognize him. He had a big overcoat on. His face was drawn, and I hid behind my mother. He later on gained his strength, but there was quite an emotion. Yeah, that they both found out that the other one was alive. He didn't know if we were alive.
It was a miracle.
Yes, this was. Yep. Any other questions? Yes.
Did the family then that were your landlords, did they like get food for you and your mom when you were in high?
Yes. Georgia Popescu, and please understand what I'm about to say, and I don't see this in any way demeaning. George was a Romanian peasant. Okay? He had very little formal education, but he was smart enough not to only hide my mother and myself, but he hid 2 other Jewish families. He didn't tell us about the others because he was afraid that if one of us would get captured, we would give away the others. He would go to the market and buy this cornmeal, and he would have to distribute it. So we got some every 3rd or 4th day. The room that my mother hid us in happened to be my parents' library. It was the smallest room in the apartment, and it was also the one that was closest to the bathroom. Bucharest, Romania was a very vital part, Romania itself was a very vital part of the Nazi war machine. Romania had oil fields. So we were bombed by the Americans during the day and the English at night. And then when the Russians started to come in from the east, we were bombed by the Russians. But when the water worked, my mother fed me full of water. It was one of her ways to keep me full. But